2014 was largely considered as one of the worst years in gaming history. After all, the AAA space was mostly filled with disappointing and broken game releases. That's not even mentioning the three most overhyped titles of the year: Titanfall, Watch Dogs, and Destiny, all of which fell flat on their face when it came to their community reception. Who could blame any experienced gamer for being cautious and cynical in the following years, after the countless disappointments and broken promises that defined 2014? Not to anyone's surprise, a new Call of Duty title came out that November too, this one primarily being developed by Sledgehammer Games, with assistance from Raven Software and High Moon Studios. At this point in time, Call of Duty had found itself at a set of crossroads. The previous year's Call of Duty Ghosts, was the lowest rated iteration the series had ever seen up to that point, mainly due to its terrible PC port, short and underwhelming campaign, lackluster graphics, and poor map design. It was obvious that fans were getting tired of Call of Duty's current formula and wanted something unique and refreshing to inject life back into the series. Activision knew to keep the franchise relevant, they would need to change the core gameplay just enough so that it would seem the series was actually innovating for once. Their response? Advanced movement. Unfortunately, this didn't go down entirely well with the community. Some, including myself, thought that this was a welcome change that would hopefully take the series in a new direction and offer up some new gameplay opportunities. Others, however, felt alienated, as this seemed like a complete departure from what made Call of Duty a popular franchise to begin with. This alienating stigma lasted over the next 2 years, as both Treyarch and Infinity Ward built on the futuristic setting, taking the series further and further away from its roots. As a result, Advanced Warfare is considered by many fans to be one of the worst Call of Duty games in history, simply because of what it did to the franchise. But today I want to determine, is advanced movement a bad thing? Was Advanced Warfare actually a terrible game? I'll only be looking at the campaign in this review, as I pointed out my disdain for PS Plus and my PS4's current lack of internet connectivity in my Infinite Warfare video. Don't worry, I know Advanced Warfare was the first game to introduce the dreaded supply drop system, but once again, I'm not going to critique something I haven't experienced. But without further ado, let's strap into our exosuits and boost jump into this review. Set in the very near future, Advanced Warfare tells the story of Jack Mitchell, a United States Marine who is sent into South Korea alongside his best friend Will Irons with the task of repelling a large North Korean invasion force. Following Will's brave sacrifice to destroy the Koreans' air defences, Mitchell loses his arm in the explosion, discharging him from the Marines and forcing him to return home. While paying his respects at Will's funeral, Mitchell meets Will's father, Jonathan Irons, who, after hearing about Mitchell's loyalty and support towards Will, offers him an opportunity to work for his privately owned military corporation, Atlas. From there, the narrative explores terrorism, deception, and soldier morality, whilst also throwing in a few plot twists along the way. While some have argued that the story is quite simplistic and cliché, I have to say that I found it generally entertaining, mainly due to the characters and their performances. Sticking to modern tradition, Advanced Warfare features a celebrity cast. That probably cost about half the budget of the entire game, and everyone knows that by now that the main draw to the story was Kevin Spacey's casting as Jonathan Irons. Putting all the hype aside, his performance is well executed, as he effectively brings out the different sides to Irons' personality. Other characters like Gideon, Cormac, Ilona, and even Will Irons, for what little time he lasts, are also quite enjoyable, as while incredibly stereotypical and ludicrous at points, they still manage to be interesting and likeable people. Of course, the gameplay is what will make or break any game, and thankfully Advanced Warfare delivers, for the most part. Like any other modern Call of Duty, the campaign is linear and mainly comprised of cinematics, set pieces, and scripted sequences. New to Advanced Warfare, however, is of course the advanced movement mechanics, in the form of the now infamous exosuit. There are two types of these exosuits depending on what mission you're playing, the Assault and the Specialist. These come with an array of abilities such as boost jumping to higher platforms, using stim packs in the heat of battle, and creating a bullet time effect for greater precision. Alongside these core abilities are some one-off perks that can be used during specific missions. For example, one mission allows you to steady your landing when dropping from high areas, whilst another arms you with a grappling hook to both traverse the environment and pull enemies close for an execution move. This futuristic technology also extends to the grenades, which can highlight the positions of enemies in the near vicinity, disable enemy drone swarms, and fly directly towards the intended target. At first glance, this all may seem like a superficial set of gimmicks done purely to inject some life into the dying husk that is Call of Duty's foundation. This rings true mainly with the one-off abilities like the mag gloves and the landing ability, as they're almost completely scripted and serve no other purpose other than to make you say, "Hey, that looks pretty neat." Most of the other abilities, however, are quite effective and enjoyable to utilize. It isn't the most intuitive on controller, but boost jumping, dodging, and slamming across the environment all feel responsive and fluid, and most importantly, fun. Hearing the thrust of your exosuit as you perform all these stunts is always satisfying and contributes significantly to the game's sense of player feedback. It's just a shame then that the level design often doesn't accommodate some of the most significant changes Advanced Warfare brings to the series. And this is where we get into the game's problems. Some easily avoidable, whereas others not so much. One of the biggest issues with the assault missions is that they provide you with all these aggressive powers, yet most levels are very narrow and constricting, often rewarding you for picking off enemies at a distance. This rears its ugly head the most on the higher difficulties, where boost jumping and approaching situations aggressively often results in being constantly pelted with enemy fire the moment you leave cover. What's more is that there are loads of completely unpredictable invisible walls, where if you go too far off the track that the game wants you to take, you'll fail the mission and have to restart from the last checkpoint. Unfortunately, like Infinite Warfare, the game can throw an obscene amount of enemies at you at once, and it doesn't help that it still suffers from having infuriating gun flinch, compounding the issue and making certain parts of the game annoyingly tedious and frustrating to get through. Thankfully though, this can be reduced using one of the other brand new features to Advanced Warfare, the upgrade system. Throughout the campaign, you earn upgrade points based on certain achievements earned within a mission, ranging from the number of total kills, to headshots, grenade kills, and even the amount of intel collected. These points are then used to improve Mitchell's reload speed, reduce weapon flinch, increase total sprint time, along with other useful skills. I really like this feature as while simplistic on the surface, it gives players an incentive to think through their actions and try different tactics, as opposed to using the same playstyle the whole time. Sometimes you even get a multiplayer supply drop when unlocking enough skills. An idea that started off innocent enough, but we all know where that eventually ended up. Anyway, despite the solid addition of the upgrade system, Advanced Warfare is yet another Call of Duty to go overboard when it comes to the number of weapons and associated variations. Thankfully, unlike Infinite Warfare, these are mainly restricted to scope variants, with the foregrip and extended mag attachments thrown in on rare occasions. It's the perfect example of bad, but not worse. What is worse, however, is that a substantial amount of the game's weapons are very uninspiring and sound incredibly similar to one another. I challenge you to go watch any video showcasing the game's weapons and tell me that the sounds of the MP11, SN6, AMR9, BAL27, ARX160, and IMR aren't borderline identical to each other. Like I said in my Infinite Warfare review, all these guns sound like microwave popcorn cooking 10 times faster than normal. However, that's not to say all the weapons are bland, uninteresting, and lack identity. A few managed to be some of the most unique, interesting, and inventive the series had seen to date. Great examples include the TAC-19, a futuristic energy-based shotgun that shoots a wave of transparent projectiles whilst letting off a powerful warping synth after each shot. Or how about the EM1, an industrial railgun that shoots out a continuous laser beam, or even the Moors, a single-shot advanced military sniper rifle that fires a powerful energy projectile, killing most enemies in a single hit. I think the cause of the problem is mainly down to the uneven distribution and weapon variety. To put it in perspective, the campaign features nearly a dozen different assault rifles and submachine guns combined. Yet in comparison, there are only 3 shotguns, 3 sniper rifles, 3 pistols, 2 LMGs, 1 grenade launcher, 1 laser rifle, and 1 RPG. If the number of submachine guns and assault rifles was sliced in half, the weapon selection would most likely be far more focused and not suffer anywhere near as much from the issue of repetitive weapon sounds. The presentation also suffers from mild graphical inconsistencies, and to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if this was entirely because of the game's cross-generational release. Despite having multiple development teams working on different versions of the game, its foundation was most likely optimized to run on the 7th generation systems, where funnily enough it sold the most. The result is a game with some truly amazing graphics in many areas, particularly the Korea, Antarctica and Thailand missions. However, other levels, while nice from a distance, can appear borderline prehistoric when looking closely. Missions like Traffic, Manhunt and Utopia suffer from very noticeable inconsistencies where you can look in one direction and be blown away by the graphical fidelity on display, then look another and be greeted by textures and geometry that are from the mid-2000s. To its credit, the game does often try and hide these problems far away in the background or in places that most players wouldn't bother looking. But if you're like me and enjoy taking in your surroundings and searching for collectibles, it does become noticeable after a while and can unfortunately detract from the experience. Thankfully, the pre-rendered cutscenes still hold up and look astounding, with top-notch facial animations, incredible attention to detail, and fluid character movement. All in all, despite some of the inconsistencies due to the cross-generational development, the game's presentation is a vast improvement over Call of Duty Ghosts and gets the job done. At the end of the day, Advanced Warfare's campaign is not so different to Infinite Warfare's when it comes to quality. It has an entertaining story, fun gunplay, good, if inconsistent, presentation, a simplistic yet effective upgrade system, and some very enjoyable futuristic gadgets. Despite the mild problems with its graphical fidelity, questionable level design, pointless gun variants, and uneven weapon variety, the game's innovative approach to combat makes it one of the best campaigns the franchise has under its belt. Unfortunately, it feels like a lot of Call of Duty fans only care about a good setting, characters, storyline, and weapon quantity, as opposed to whether the game is fun or not. You know, what actually matters? It's a shame too, because out of all the Call of Duty games I've played, most of my favourites are futuristic, simply because of their entertainment value. Games like Black Ops, Modern Warfare 2, and dare I say it, the original Modern Warfare, all fail at providing any substance at all when it comes to actual gameplay. But that's a rant for another day, and so I'll conclude this review with my final recommendation. I'd suggest picking it up on sale and judging it by how fun it is, not how it compares to older Call of Duty games, because once you do that, you'll realise how enjoyable jumping around in an exosuit can actually be.